Hello, this is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I am joined by head-to-head host and Ole Miss sideline reporter Richard Cross. Richard, how are you, man? Thanks for coming on.
Great, Parrish. I appreciate you having me.
Hey, just wanted to talk a little Ole Miss football with you and a few other topics too. First of all, give me your take on the bowl matchup. What do you think about Ole Miss and TCU in the Peach?
I think this new format that the SEC and the College Football Playoff went with, the fact that it's a 4-team playoff and not an 8-team playoff aside, I think aside from that, they nailed it. I really like what the SEC did this year with being able to take those group of 6 games from the conference's standpoint and kind of assign people where they thought it made the most sense and put some good matchups together. And for Ole Miss in particular, I mean, it's been kind of interesting to read some things this morning and listening to some of the early commentary about bowl matchups. I think people nationally are as excited about watching the matchup between Ole Miss and TCU as any other game. I was in Atlanta this weekend for the SEC championship game and talked to some people from the Peach Bowl, and there was a little bit of trepidation there about the possibility of Ole Miss coming back again. They like to conveniently forget that they had Ole Miss on Thursday night against a team from 3,000 miles away, and they kind of look at the ticket sales from that at the Peach Bowl. But I think they're going to find an excited Ole Miss fan base, and I think it's going to be a great crowd, great matchup. Kind of an interesting time slot at 12:30 or 11:30 Central on New Year's Eve, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's what we call a newspaper-friendly kickoff, Richard. I'm very excited
Indeed.
about that. Very excited about that time slot. Tell you what,
there is no deadline, monkey.
That's right. I do think it's a great matchup. It'll be a lot of fun to watch and cover because I know what I missed, Richard, and you've been there too. I was a little disappointed that it wasn't the Cotton Bowl when it was trending that way a little bit. It looked like they might get back to Dallas. Such a wonderful event there. I know the Peach Bowl people will do a great job as well. I do think it's going to be a great matchup and a fun game. It could be a little similar to the Texas Tech Cotton Bowl, Richard, in the sense that the Ole Miss opponent is dealing with some disappointment.
They are. You know, you think about that Texas Tech team, if I remember, Parrish, didn't they hold the #1 slot for a couple of weeks at some point during that season I think it was after they defeated Texas?
I believe that's right, and then ultimately lost it, I guess, with the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma. I think that's how that played out.
And, you know, people were talking about how good and how offensively that was just going to blow Ole Miss, and you may remember the image where there was one of the Ole Miss players on the sideline holding up the whiteboard with the dry erase marker that said, 98% of America said we couldn't and we just did, or, all those things that went along with it. I don't think you're going to get the same level of disrespect, if that's how you want to classify it, for Ole Miss. I think people are looking at Ole Miss's defense, and especially Ole Miss's secondary, and their ability to turn people over throughout the course of the season. And then they're looking at a TCU team who has had a ton of success throwing it. They put up a bunch of points throughout the course of the year. Boykin's been really good. And it's a TCU team that, never mind your grandfather wouldn't recognize, if your kid that was born a year ago wouldn't recognize. They were a defensive-oriented Gary Patterson, went with that pro-style offense. He realized that wasn't going to work in the Big 12. And, I think you tip your hat to Gary Patterson for the adjustment that he made, bringing in some guys that really knew the spread. And, boy, have they been fun to watch throughout the course of the year. So that was a whole lot of words to not answer your question at all. Yes, is it similar, I suppose, to that Texas Tech matchup? I think it is. I just think this has got the making to be a really good football game.
I think so, too. Richard, you were kind of thrust into the sideline reporter role at Ole Miss with the untimely death of Stan Sandroni that many of us knew and loved. What's it been like this season for you on the sideline?
I mentioned a second ago that I was in Atlanta this weekend. Last meal I shared with Stan Sandroni was the Wednesday night before the season opener against Boise State. We went to a steakhouse, and if you know Stan, if you knew Stan at all, let's call him frugal. It seems like frugal would be a better way to describe Stan than cheap. But this is probably not the type restaurant that Stan would have picked. But I sat directly across from the table of him after he realized that he was not going to order a hamburger off the menu, that he was actually going to eat a steak. I think he really enjoyed it. Just absolutely as unique and one of a kind as they come. I miss Stan dearly. I have enjoyed a lot the sideline duties this year. Parrish, I've tried not to replicate Stan or be Stan, and I'd be lying to you if I said, when I'm on the sideline during the game, I'm thinking about the way Stan would have done this or that. I haven't done that, and that's by design. I just, Stan was unique and did things the way that he did them, and I wanted to do the best job that I could. Certainly doesn't minimize the loss for his family or for our friend, but I've just tried to do the best job that I could do, and provide, in this case, a listener, information that they couldn't get otherwise, or that David Kellum and Harry Harrison up in the radio booth can't see or can't get to, that unique perspective gives you the chance to get.
Talk to us about head-to-head a little bit, Richard. Obviously, very popular with you and Matt there, and the callers, and just the topics that you hit every day. How's the show going? Do you like where you guys are at?
I do. I hope we can continue to grow. This has been it's been an incredible year for us, Parrish. I'm sure, like you, you've seen such an increase in interest on the blog, and people with their insatiable appetite for college football news, especially about their team. I think we have benefited from that as well. This historic season that we've had with Ole Miss and Mississippi State has left people wanting more and more and more. The show's growing. We're in 81 of 82 counties right now in Mississippi. Still got to get that DeSoto County thing figured out, and we're working diligently on that. But it's been a great year.
That's big. Yeah, it's a big county. Y'all need to get there.
Yeah.
Listen,
easier said than done.
Yeah. Do your callers, do your listeners view you as the Ole Miss guy and Matt as the State guy? Do you get any credibility for your commentary on the other schools there?
I think that depends on who you ask. I think there are people who are reasonably level-headed that realize that we both got a job to do. Yes, I think most people identify, if maybe because of the title of the show, if you will, head-to-head with one guy as an Ole Miss guy and one as a State guy, that okay, Richard is the Ole Miss guy, Matt's the Mississippi State guy, and that's fine. But we have both worked hard to be fair. That doesn't mean we don't poke fun or tell jokes or laugh at each other, or but that for the most part is in good fun and is kind of good-natured ribbing. Parrish, you know this as well as I do. It doesn't really matter what you write or what you say. For the most part, people are going to hear or read what they want to hear or read. And so we're just trying to do the best we can. We're trying to provide something that people can't get anywhere else, and that is a statewide radio platform that is focused first and foremost on Mississippi State and Ole Miss. And I think we have been able to achieve that goal, and I hope it continues to grow.
How do you handle difficult callers? And I'm asking here, what is the line between letting someone vent their frustration and disappointment on whatever the topic might be, and then cutting them off if they have crossed your line somewhere? How do you handle those callers?
Profanity's got to go, and that's our producer Rhino in the studio. He takes care of that. There's a little bit of a delay there, and if somebody's got to be dumped, they get dumped. That doesn't happen all that often. For me, and Matt might answer this differently. I think it's on intelligence and how you're able to. I mean, you can kind of be out in left field with an opinion, or thinking a coach needs to be fired, or thinking a player is awful. I would say if you're looking for hard, fast lines, I've got a pretty short leash on really going after or being personal about players at the collegiate level. I just, whether that's old-fashioned or not, whether they should be paid or not, and all that good stuff, I just think that's a little over the line. And if you really go after a kid, not to say you can't be critical of somebody, coaches are pretty much free reign. But regardless of what you're saying or whether or not I agree with it, if there's some intelligence or some thought or a thought process behind whatever it is that you're trying to communicate with us, then pretty much okay with it.
Hey, Richard, one more, and we'll
Hey, what
let you go,
should it
man.
be, Parrish?
What should it be? Well,
Yeah.
you're the radio guy, man. You're the host. I'll tell you, I think you've got some good boundaries there. I think there's no place for profanity, and after that, you can walk a hard and fast line with profanity. It's easy to do that. Okay.
Sure.
After that, there is a gray area there. I mean, you want people to call in with passion, and you want
Yes.
them to voice their opinions, but you can't have it get personal. I agree. I mean, when it goes into personal attacks, and that might be different for every caller. That's something you and Matt have to deal with on the fly. When your personal button is pushed. But I think it's easy for passionate callers to stray that way because we know how they love these teams. Okay, we see that, we live it, we experience it. I think it would be easy for callers to go that way. And so I think it's probably difficult for you guys to walk that line and know when you're really letting people have their say,
Yeah.
and when they've gone over the line. I think that'd be pretty difficult to do, and I think y'all have done a good job of it from the times I've been able to listen. I'll tell you, Richard, I'm not around the radio. I'm not your wire-to-wire listener there, but if I'm in the car, if I'm driving back from Oxford, I'm listening. Sometimes I'll send you guys a snarky text, but like we had fun with the Louisiana Lafayette and the hyphen, So
Sure.
anyway, I think y'all have done a good job there. Hey, one more question for you, as you've covered Ole Miss on the sideline this year. What's been the body language of the team as they have watched some of their better players sustain these injuries, whether for the end of the season like Laquan Treadwell or just injuries are going to hurt them while they play like Laramie Tunsil and Bo Wallace? How's the team responded to that, do you think?
It's an interesting question. The Laquan Treadwell injury was so late in the game that I don't think you had the chance for that to be this stunning everybody. I remember we were in the doing the post-game radio show, and whoever the player of the game was that day, probably would have been Laquan Treadwell, was sitting with us and asked another teammate, what's the injury? They said, oh, it's broken, or knee, or whatever. And the reaction is just like, oh man. I think the common thing that all those guys, and the reason that it's so difficult for them to watch teammates have season-ending injuries, is that they all know how much work goes into it. And those guys remember the 5 a.m. workouts in January and February when fans were just thinking, I can't wait for August and September to get here to play another game. And they remember going through the heat in two-a-days and the grind of an entire season. And I think that's what makes it so difficult. They hated it for Vince Sanders the other night, but, the attitude that these coaches they just beat into these players is, you've heard it and it's cliche, but it's next man up. It's like, that's part of how you motivate second and third string players who aren't starters. You remember that, I'm sure, Parrish, from maybe when you were playing Little League baseball. You're one injury away from you being the guy. I mean, I remember that as a sophomore in high school playing quarterback. Oh, what a bummer. I'm backup or third string or whatever it was. They said, hang on, you got to get ready too because you're one knee injury away from being a starting quarterback on this team. It was just a personal example. But I think in the moment, for the most part, they're able to lock in.
Good stuff, Richard. Thanks for being with us, man. I appreciate it. We will catch up with you guys later. Keep up the good work on the show.
Thank you, Parrish. Good visiting with you.